Hi, folks. I'm Adrian Sanabria, the host of Enterprise Security Weekly. Every week, we interview the most interesting folks we can find talking about the most pressing cybersecurity issues and challenges facing the enterprise today. Myself and my co-hosts have each been in the industry for decades, long enough to see the patterns in the industry and explore where trends are going. In addition to enterprise challenges, we also follow the vendor space, the most interesting security startups emerging, technology and product trends, all the most interesting funding and acquisition announcements. Finally, we love to discuss the latest trends in tech and how they'll impact cybersecurity. If you're wondering how the latest in AI, quantum computing, cloud, and DevOps is going to impact security a few years down the road, you should follow the Enterprise Security Weekly podcast.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Ben Carr. Join us for one of our Identiverse regional events coming up on December 1st in New York City and December 5th in Chicago. Participate alongside local experts and regional peers in information-rich sessions on the latest technologies, best practices, and industry trends. Secure your complimentary registration by visiting securityweekly.com/IDV Regional Events 2023. That is a mouthful, so go check the show notes. All right, gentlemen, articles for the week.
Yeah.
You'll notice a trend. So we did a pre-record for the November 13th show right before this on cyber risk management. You should check it out because it's an awesome segment. Mm-hmm. But some of the themes from that also happen to be in the article stash for this week. And so this first article, proactive boards enable more reliable cyber governance. Do they? Or will they?
I hope to God.
I hope so.
They better, right? I mean, teaser for the say easy, do hard, but involvement from all of the stakeholders, from business unit leaders to the board, is essential. Because again, the CISO cannot be doing this alone. You need to have a board who supports you. And the article kind of goes through some of these best practices to get a cyber resilient board in play, and some where the boards need to be thinking. I look at order of things. You guys know that, right? Yep. So I kind of flip the order around. That's in the article. Identify knowledge gaps first. Like, what's the baseline of the board? Do they have any knowledge of cyber? Do they have zero knowledge of cyber? Mm-hmm. Do you need to educate them and get them up to speed? And then from there, they go into understand the threat, but I'm going to change that to understand the risk.
Yes, that was mine too.
Did you really?
Yeah, exactly right. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, the threat's important, but without understanding the impact, which is really a risk discussion, that's the way the board has to think about this. Yes. The board in not too much from this pre-record, it's about risks. Mm-hmm. Right? And the board understands risk when it comes to dollar value, potential impact. And without the impact side of this, the threat's not enough, I don't think. It has to be understood.
That's the job of the board, right? I mean, the entire job of the board is to think about from a risk perspective across all lines of business. And so if you just are bringing, we could bring threats all day long, but if the threat never manifests, like, why would you spend any money protecting against it? So I think that's really the core function that you need to think about is from a risk lens. Mm-hmm. How do I perceive that threat, and what then what's the right action to take against?
Yeah, I mean, I read this and I'm like, does the board really need to understand that Clop Leaks is a ransomware gang? Probably not. What they need to know is the risks that face your organization, your vertical, the types of data you have, your clients, the risk around your clients. That's the conversation that we need to be having. So it's less about the threats. I mean, it's part of the conversation, but the board wants to understand the risk to the business.
Correct. The other two it talks about here is, I don't know if you changed the order, evolve governance practices. Mm-hmm. Yep. So if I identify gaps in the board knowledge and I go a risk management approach, that then should evolve the governance practices.
100% agreed.
Right? Then you start to create a cyber aware organizational culture.
That's right, because now it's based on the strategies of the leadership and the board. Now you can start educating on that downstream to the entirety
of the organization.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if you don't know how to do that, then how are you going to know the context of what you're educating?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, it's very valid, Ben, right? Like, look, we know that security awareness training by itself isn't actually moving the needle. So, most people would think about nurture a cyber aware organizational culture and think security awareness and training. You'll be like, nope, That didn't work. Like it has to be aligned to strategies and gaps and understanding of where your potential risk.
That's right. All the way down to the employee. They need to understand what winning the game means, right? And if you don't know what the game is, you don't know the strategies and the governance around it, and you're not solid as a leadership team and an organization to aligning cybersecurity to that, it's going to be doing cyber awareness by chance, not by design.
Oh, agreed. By chance.
Yeah, in the simplest context, if you think about like if you're running a company that is a cyber awareness company and you spend a lot of time trying to educate the company on what the correct cyber awareness policy should be, that's probably a miss, right? If it's a phishing company and you're educating people on phishing, probably a miss because they probably already understand that. And that's super easy to understand. But the more complex side of the enterprise equation is you've got different parts of the organization that need different education and awareness understanding. Like it's not the same across the org. It's not the same from org to org. So you have to understand what the gaps are and how you're going to educate effectively, and especially within the culture of that organization to get it to be accepted in the best way possible.
Yeah, know your audience.
One size does not fit all.
No.
In this case.
Yep.
In Ben, you bring this up a little bit. A lot of people have been going to role-based training. I don't even think it's role-based. I think it's risk-based training.
100%.
It's got to be risk-based training. Like, where are my risks? And let me train to mitigate those risks, which is not one-size-fits-all security awareness training, and it's not role-based because the risks vary by role, but you're going to have pockets of roles that have similar risks, so do it at the risk level.
Again, it's the say easy, do hard. You have to understand your assets. People are an asset. Departments are an asset. The finance team needs to know how their day-to-day could bring risk to the business, right?
Yeah.
The HR team needs to know how their day-to-day brings risk to the business. And you need to be...
Well, we talk about it all the time within our lives, right? What's the only thing we don't get more of ever? Time.
Right.
And so if you're wasting your time on stuff that's low risk versus taking on the things for that individual team or company that are high risk, it's a total miss. You've got to focus on the things that are most relevant and most risk challenging to that part of the org that you're trying to educate or create a change in dynamic.
Absolutely. Article number 2, are we ready for CISOs to be more flexible? I'm ready to be more flexible. I'm just saying. I'm getting old.
Yeah,
the entry to this is awesome. The entry to this is awesome. Love them or hate them, companies need their CISOs and security teams. That's classic. Well, again, this is something we talk about a lot. Is CISOs need to be less rigid. They need to be working across borders. When I say that, across business units, across partners, we need to engage as mutual stakeholders here to bring the business forward, and we need to be interacting with those stakeholders accordingly. And that requires flexibility. That requires the ability to have conversations about risk, about how to mitigate risk and come up with a consensus together as a business.
Yeah, it's got... it talks about how corporate accountability needs a reboot first. Well, we can start with the Fortune 500. Right. Oh, enough. But I mean,
truth.
Well, because they must hate their CISOs because they don't have them or something. I don't know. Right. Whatever it is. But it was an interesting article, and I was thinking through, some of the examples. Okay, I get it. But again, at the end of the day, it is about flexibility when it comes to figuring out how to move the business forward.
Right.
To me, that is the biggest thing. Yeah. That is the challenge for CISOs and the security teams, is they have to be aligned to the business.
And the business needs to be ready for it as well, though. It's not just the CISO to be flexible. It's the business needs to be flexible to work with the CISO because, again, we cannot do this alone. The feet on the street within the business units know where the risk lies, and we can be part of that facilitator to help mitigate it.
Yes. All right, back to go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
Just the only thing I'd throw in here is, like, I look at this a little bit like an introvert and an extrovert trying to talk, right? Like, it's like both parties have to be aware of the other's, positives, negatives, and styles of communication. And so if you've got a CISO that's being inflexible, it's certainly not going to be effective. But if the business doesn't understand why they need a CISO and they hired somebody and they're frustrated by it, I mean, there is a little bit of ownership on their end to understand what the job of the CISO is and what they're trying to do and why they're actually saying, hey, don't do this thing, it's bad.
Yeah. Back to our risk management. CISO best practices for managing risk. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a order
I love
difference.
it. Do it.
Right? We talked about this too, not to give too much away. It says use appropriate frameworks. Like, really? Is that where we're going to start? Like,
Right.
Are
Which one out of the many?
35 plus that are out there? There's an article on the 35 plus in
Right,
this stack
right,
here too. And it's like, really, is that where I want to start? Or do I want to start with like understand my regulatory contractual obligations, understand my risks are, then think about control and frameworks? Like,
let's understand where you could be sued or you could have fines leaned against you.
So funny that's second, right? Like you don't understand your regulatory obligations to HIPAA, but you're not going to use a HIPAA framework. Like I don't get that.
I don't either. Yeah. And then it goes into number 3, create a sustainable vulnerability management program. Really? Like, of all the things from a risk management perspective I'm supposed to do, I got to go build a VM program?
Right. Yeah.
Do I?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe, but it's not third.
No. You want to know what? Let's bubble focus on the basics way up.
They drove into technology really fast, right? Into a specific when they haven't even gotten to the fix the basics. What are the basics?
All the things that we're not doing, right? All the
basics like asset management.
Hey,
asset management. Ding, 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 ding.
We need to have a show where we drink every time.
Oh my gosh. We'll be drunk 10 minutes in. Are you kidding me? Oh my God. We consolidate security toolkits. Okay, granted. Yep. But again, there's too much focus on the technology and not enough on the other thing. And then communicate risk effectively is like number 6. It's the last one on the list.
No.
Has to come way higher, folks. Way higher.
Absolutely.
Like, this is a risk management discipline, whether we want to think about it that way or not, which is why we did the pre-record, which will air in 2 weeks on this topic. We cannot wait until 6 after I build a VM program to figure out how to communicate risk effectively.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Just a wrong order.
I mean, there was one golden nugget from Greg Rogers, the CISO of the state of Maryland. He said that if an organization has good security in place, compliance will generally follow. Hey!
Yeah.
Right?
Did anybody see Bryson Bort's LinkedIn post? It was last week. He said, compliance is a list, security is a graph, and then I added a reply. I said risk is a DAG, a directed acyclic graph, because it's so complex. And if we think about things as just compliance, you're missing so much.
Absolutely.
You're missing so much. To me, it's really focus on risks to identify where the security components are, and then compliance will be an outcome, because if I'm solving the complex graph natures of risk and security, it's just a result.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. This next article gives a list of the over 35 international cybersecurity standards. So if you really want to focus on control frameworks first, here's the list. But what I really went to is, this is from SANS, actually, and it points you to a sample-free risk assessment tool. And look, I like to promote things that help people get their arms around risk. And so you can go out and download this risk assessment tool. I think it's an Excel spreadsheet that just helps you start to get your arms around risk. And to me, this is where organizations should be starting. People come in, they think about the technology, they think about all the controls, they think about how they have to go deploy their next endpoint agent or whatever it is. And it's like, no, just back up and do a risk assessment.
Yeah, totally. I downloaded the entire toolkit. Just so
did you?
Yeah, totally, 100%. Of course, I wanted to know, right? So it's actually a collection of things. They have a cybersecurity standard scorecard. They have a control catalog where you can look at all the different controls from the different frameworks, where they bring it together. And then they have the assessment tool, which kind of brings it all together into one screen, one window, where you can start assessing risk, and then it'll break it down to like risk, like NIST RMF for you. Oh, right, and where you fall, or CIS controls. It'll break it down in a tab if you want to focus on CIS or if you want to focus on NIST. So the tool is really cool. I want to have my team kind of beat it up a little bit and see. And I'll give the folks here who are listening a little end result of us beating it up for a little while. It looks really cool out of the gate. It looks
I've used something very similar to this in the past, and it's a really great way to start, is to actually build this and build it in an automated process, so you can look at this and it's kind of agnostic and nobody can really argue with it. You basically agree to the model internally in the organization and what you're going to do, and then the output of that is you look at how you're going to create an improvement strategy from 1 to 3 years or 1 to 5 years, and then you just map against that, create your benchmarks out.
Yeah, this will give you a great baseline.
I'm curious when you dig into it. We were talking about this. If you start at the risks and it maps out the controls, then can you apply those risks and controls to assets? So does it account for the asset side or not?
Not that I've seen so far, but again, I downloaded it this morning. I took a really quick look at it. We'll see.
Okay.
I want to dig into it.
All right, good. Because it really aligns to that pre-record segment we did earlier, which is why I pulled this article in, because I think is a good precursor to that episode.
And we talked about baselining, right? This could give you a really good baseline.
Exactly. That's where risk scores can be a benefit, is baselining.
That's right.
Yes, in comparison. Yes. Next article. Oh, strategic leadership. I love to pull in these different articles. There's been a few of them on the leadership side. And this one was really interesting. Again, order is important to me, right? And to me, strategic leadership starts with alignment. And it's kind of it's the second to last one on this list. One of the first things I do when I walk into an organization is I want to learn.
Right.
I want to learn. I want to meet with all the leadership team. I want to understand what's working, what's not working, where the gaps are, etc. Because the first thing I want to figure out is alignment.
Sure.
Right? Where are we going? How do we align product, services, etc. to that direction? Right. Where are the gaps, right? Then the rest of these things start to come into play.
Sure.
But that alignment piece is so important. And when I look at an article like this, I look at it like you. Like, what's the order of things I should do? I want to align first.
Do you want to learn first?
Well, yeah, learn and align.
Learn and align,
yeah,
right? Because we always talk about the CISO's first 100 days or 120 days or first 90 days. Those first 90 or 120 days should be learning the organization.
Yeah.
Learning the stakeholders, learning the players, really learn the business, then start aligning to the business, right? And then from there, you can start doing like interpret what you've learned into a good security program, and then start evangelizing and communicating, right?
Yep.
And then from there, you can start making decisions. You can challenge processes. And then it's anticipate, because now you're proactive.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So that was the order that I wrote out.
Yeah, you and I think about this the same way.
We have to. I mean, we're trying to do a service to our readers, our listeners, and the order in which you do things is extremely important. Because the last thing you want is for a CISO to start their first 90 days and start anticipating problems when they don't even know the business.
Yeah, they don't even know.
You can't.
Right. Or anticipate the market.
Yeah. You want to be looked at like a roadblock?
Yeah.
There you go. Start anticipating problems when you're not educated on the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do a lot more listening in your first 90 days.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you start making decisions before you understand the business, and you're going to walk right into the no trap.
Yeah. That seat at the table, it sent you to the kids' table. Right? That's it.
Well, how many CISOs have heard, like, you don't understand the business? Like, you don't understand why we're doing this. Like, and you're like, no, I do. But yeah, you gave off the impression, even if you really do, you gave off the impression that you don't, because she just started talking, right?
That's right.
Develop that skill of listening, understanding, and then ask a lot of questions, right? Don't come up with solutions, but ask a lot of questions, and then start to come from a solution perspective. That's right. Because now you're going to be recognized as someone who understands what everyone else has gone through.
And make decisions together, not dictate decisions, right? Don't try to dictate. Try to come to a consensus. That's how you're viewed as a team player, part of the business that you want to move the business forward, right? Yeah. So that's how to be seen as a team player, is come to a consensus.
Yeah.
Art of negotiation, baby. Work with the business units.
Yeah.
So, did you say art of the deal? Is that what you said?
In some businesses, it is about the art of the deal, right?
Totally.
It is so much so. It's funny because whenever you start a new job, everyone wants to see your 30, 60, 90. My first 30 days is just learning.
Oh, yeah.
And then aligning, and then starting to build stuff. But it goes to this article, which is why I pulled this in here. Because it's a really good reminder of kind of the steps we need to walk through when you walk in to a place new.
Yeah. The other piece that I pulled out of this, Matt, was it gives you great visibility into how leadership in a business looks at you as a leader. It says, most large-scale organizations have 3 defined leadership classifications. You have strategic, you have operational, and you have, production or action-oriented. And each one going down the line is less and less strategic, right? So how do you want to be viewed as a leader within your organization? I want to take that strategic seat.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, especially when you're aligned with the business. Yeah, the outcomes are way more positive from that position. All right, last article, evolution of work and how companies can prepare.
Yeah.
I think we talked a little bit about this earlier with skills shortage and stuff. And as a organization, I think this applies to the CISO as well, as they have to continually, fill the skills in their organization. What are the things we have to be prepared for?
And especially in this environment as things are changing so rapidly.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's what we got to keep an eye on. I mean, labor market disparity, they call out. Focus on enterprise social and governance. That's going to become a huge thing in the next handful of years. I'm telling you right now. If you start looking at the major players, they're all starting to focus on ESG, right? So there's going to be a ton of disruption happening, and we really need to start preparing for that.
We also have a very large segment of the population getting ready to retire.
Job churn, they called it out in here.
And you're going to see these retirements start to impact the available resources. The baby boomers are retiring, right? And as they retire and they come out, who's going to fill those roles? How are people going to fill into those spaces? It's a big challenge. And it's interesting. The first 8 questions, so it gives you a list of 8 questions to kind of prepare yourself. Is the stature of the chief human risk officer role sufficiently elevated and recognized within the organization to enable performance to expectations? And I read that in both a positive and a negative way, right? Because I see certain HR departments that they just get in the way.
Oh yeah, totally.
Get in the way.
But we've talked about this. How do we influence? Right? We've had this conversation.
Yeah, exact same thing. I mean, you've got to align with them, but yeah, you're right. That can be problematic. But I read that first line, and I read it 3 or 4 times before I saw CHRO there. I kept saying CISO. It's funny how
right.
Or chief people officer. Is the other one that's starting to hear too.
Where we're at today.
Thanks. So some good questions in here to help organizations prepare and get ready, because it's going to be a continued challenge in the security field for sure. But I think other roles, other departments are also going to go through some of these same challenges, and it's better now to prepare, work with HR, and figure out your long-term, short-term hiring plans and how you're going to, continue to bring in the right people.
That's right. I mean,
if you read this list, right, except for the first one, right, which we joked about, the other 7 on here, if you're a good CISO, you should be asking yourself these questions. And I think if you're thinking about this proactively, this is an area of the company you can align yourself with for another exec to say, look, if you go to your whether it's CHRO or CPO and say, hey, I just want to make sure we're aligned. I've been thinking about whether we're addressing how the talent pool, in security is going to enable the company to meet short and long-term gains. It's going to blow their mind. They're going to be like, what? You're really thinking about this, right? So, I mean, I think these are all very salient questions for us to be asking of our own organizations and what we're doing to make sure our talent pool is the right talent.
And Ben, I would say take it beyond just the cybersecurity and technology team. Are we building a program to retain and or recruit folks who are going to fit into this new modern workplace?
Yeah.
I mean, all day long, it's going to expand for all roles. So if the chief people officer sees the CISO being that level of strategic with them, about not just worrying about the security team and the IT team, but worrying about the entire workforce, now we're going to be seen as strategic.
Well, you said something in there, and I remember one of our CISO interviews. People don't want to be retained; they want to be developed, right?
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
It's not a retention play, it's a development play. And we got to think about it that way.
Right.
Like employees don't want to be retained.
Right.
They want to be developed.
That's right.
They want to grow their careers, right? So if we think about it from a development standpoint, not a retainment standpoint, like what are the right things we should be doing in our hiring practices to develop our employees, not just retain them?
And that's a great point. I mean, that's me speaking in the vein of HR muscle memory, right? Yep. So we have to remember to think in that fashion. You're absolutely right. You just gut checked me. I love it. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, because this reminded me of that retain versus develop.
Yeah.
And then you said it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that just
muscle
triggered
memory.
my brain. The last one on here, I think, is a really interesting one in the world that we're in right now. And I know there's been some activities from a conference perspective. Are we managing the talent implications of high-risk corporate stances as well as we should? I think, there's been a little backlash on Black Hat in the last week with some stuff that's been going on in Israel and stuff. Like, how do organizations get their arms around this? Because this is real. Like, we're in a really interesting environment right now, political environment.
Yeah.
We've got a couple major wars kind of going on around the world. And how do you manage some of those high risk stances with
Right. Right.
'Cause-
And with a little bit of fuel, this could turn into something major globally.
yeah, I know.
So
I know.
we
Just
have to be
something-
paying attention.
Yeah, we got to be paying attention. We got to understand what our employees are doing and
That's right.
and that kind of stuff. It just
right.
reminded me of some of the stuff I saw last week, and I was like, ooh, this last point is a
Right.
really good point right now in the world that we're in.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. As always, always a pleasure to be in studio with you, Jason. Next time, Ben, we'll get you in studio, buddy. Thank you,
All right,
everyone.
all right, I'm holding you to it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.